Good afternoon, Switch community. Today we're going to go over transplanting plants. I have a couple house plants that I'm going to transplant, some of the seedlings that we saw from the dungeon, and I'm also going to plant some blueberries. So thanks for hanging out with me. Let's see what's happening. Okay, so the goal today is to transplant this beautiful, beautiful pothos, to transplant some of the tomatoes, the dill, the fennel, and some of the mixed seedlings in this pot here. I am also going to plant blueberries I just bought because I can't help myself but to buy plants constantly. I have never tried the self-pollinating ones. They're good for containers, and I would really prefer not to plant these in the ground. At the moment, we rent a house, and while we do have an in-ground garden in the back, most of those things are not returning crops. So we're going to give this patio container a try. I picked up peach sorbet and blueberry glaze. Okay, so I am in my kitchen, because that's how I roll. So I'm in the kitchen. I just have some potting soil in here. I purchased a 4 cubic bag of potting soil from Menards just a little while ago. So that is not as manageable as putting it in a smaller container. All right, so let's get started. What I think I'm going to do is the pothos first. And if you can see here, it does, I mean, it's not like root bound. It does need changed. It's been in here for quite a while. Actually, this plant came from just a very small clipping, 2 small clippings that I just stuffed in the dirt and let go to see what they would do. And this pretty substantial plant at this point. The container also has a crack in it and it leaks water, so we're just going to give that a transplant and see if it likes life a little bit better. Okay, so when I start, usually what I do is try to gently separate the roots from the pot. You know, you really don't want to. I mean, you're already disturbing the roots a little, and the goal here is to limit the shock that you put on the plant. Actually, this is way more root bound than I thought it was. It is not wanting to come out. Fortunately, pothos are pretty hardy, and they can take a little bit of a jolt. So this actually definitely needed transplanted. I did not realize how root bound it actually was. So if you can see just how root bound it is, it was due. It was definitely due for a change. All right, so typically when you're up potting, what you want to do is go up just a little bit bigger than what you already had. I do not have a container that will fit into this decorative pot that I would like to use. So something that I have done in the past is to just like put rocks at the bottom. The soil needs to be well drained. With pothos, I've had good success with this. I've had pothos for years. I'm pretty savvy when it comes to watering them. To my knowledge, I have never killed one of my pothos completely anyway. So we're going to go ahead and give this a try and put rocks in there. Please don't cringe if you're anti rocks in the bottom. Again, I really want to use this decorative pot, and so that's what I'm going to do. All right, so what I usually do is fill some dirt in the bottom. There's a good bunch right there that I will when I put the plants back in, and then I will backfill it. But for now, I'm just going to use this purchased soil. And the purchased soil is actually an all-purpose mix that I picked up. This is what I actually picked up. Pro Mix, Premium All-Purpose Mix. And all-purpose means all-purpose. It even says here, ideal for indoor gardening. So I'm not sure a person would need that much if you're just doing small indoor gardening. However, I tend to use a whole lot of soil. Whatever's left over from what I'm not planting, which is next to never, we put it in the compost pile outside, and we actually do compost quite a bit. So I'm not just using purchased soil. We essentially make our own soil. All right, so that's pretty good there, I think. All right, we'll make a little hole, and so this is pretty root bound. Again, pothos are pretty hardy. What I'm doing is just trying to expand them over a little bit. I'm trying to encourage them to spread out and grow some more. I'm also doing this one-handed, so doing my best to be gentle. All right, so now pothos are plants that actually root all the way up the stem. So while the whole stem itself does not root, these are or were roots. So they tend to, I don't know, these are right here. These are roots right here. So what they tend to do is pull moisture from the air, and they're vining. So out in the wild, if you will, they would be vining right across the ground. Surprising that that's the only one that I really see. So in theory, we could like actually plant this, and it would just continue to grow more plants off of those little roots up there. But I don't have that kind of space, so I'm just going to weave it back over the curtain rod where I originally had it once I get in this bigger pot. All right, so I'm going to backfill with the soil that was in the pot it was already in. The fresh soil's in the bottom. When you're transplanting most of your plants, you do not want to go over the stem because not all plants will grow roots from any part of the stem. So that's why I'm being mindful not to cover up where it already was. Again, where I showed you with the eyelets, that would be fine. With the little roots that are sprouting over there, that place, we could actually cut that off and just root that. And pothos are pretty hardy overall, so you could actually probably cut off any place on here and stick it in some water, some soil, and it would root for you. I also leave 1/2 inch to 1 inch, so when I water it, I am not making messes. All right, so that's how we transplant the house plant. Let me get it put away, and I'll show you where it is and what it looks like, and then we'll come back and do some of these seedlings. Okay, so the pothos has been put back in its home, taking up a little bit more space with a bigger pot, but this one is just running right across the window. So, and I imagine with the growth we've had recently, it's just going to continue to get bigger. So maybe I'll string it up that way. Not sure. And as I was hanging it up, I noticed there are little root balls like all over it. The next transplant we're doing is Brandywine Pink Tomato. I tried these for the first time at the end of last season. I actually planted them just in time to get a tomato or two off of it. I love them. They're absolutely amazing. I ordered the packets off of M.I. Gardner. That's not my only go-to. I also will buy them at the store. I get really anywhere. I get seeds anywhere. Something that I did a lot last year was harvest. So that way I don't have to continue to purchase seeds. I don't care to do that. I would like to harvest. So last year I actually did quite a bit of harvesting. Now, normally I wouldn't necessarily transplant these at the moment, but they're awfully close together. There's little roots. They're awfully close together. These are a couple of my very favorite tomatoes, and I would really like to maintain as many of them as possible. So, to me, with clearly no surgical experience, I kind of refer to this as surgery. The reason I'm doing it this small, in addition to because they're so close together, as the roots are not bounding together at this point. So it's fairly easy to separate them, and tomatoes are pretty hardy overall. So if you notice too, I'm just setting them back down here. I'm getting pots to put them in, but I'm also attempting not to let the foliage touch the dirt. We do want to prevent that. So even though I am new to these particular types of containers, what I would really like is for my tomatoes to live their lives in these containers without me having to transplant them again until I'm ready to put them in the ground. Now, tomatoes are one of the awesome plants that you can actually plant the whole stem. Now, clearly I'm not going to stick it down to the ground where the leaves are touching. That's not what we want to do. The soil has different bacteria and microbes in it that's just really not good for the foliage on the plant. It can actually kill it, and it's really counterproductive to what we want to do. That soil is also the soil I just took them out of, also awfully wet, so they're not dry. They didn't dry out as much downstairs as I had hoped. Okay, so I'm going to label this with a very big marker on the side so that I know what it is. Again, these two are pink Brandywine. Again, we're just putting a little bit of the original soil at the bottom, putting some of the soil that I have already. Now, if you notice, I really did not fill these pots up a whole lot. And that's because when they grow a little bit bigger, I would like to add more soil. So that way the whole stem of this tomato will root. It will help the trunk just be really sturdy. And then after the temperature is appropriate enough to plant them outside, what I will do is then actually plant them even further down in the ground. Last year we had some tomatoes that really were like saplings, if you know, like a tree. They were massive, and that was just because when I transplanted them down as far as I possibly could. Alright, so hopefully these are their homes until we can transplant them outside. I will water them and then put them back under the grow light. I'm probably putting them upstairs as opposed to putting them down in the basement. They're getting taller and there's just more light upstairs because it's, not in the basement. Okay, then the next and final transplant I'm going to do of the seedling is some German chamomile. All the rest of them are basically going to go the same way as the two I just did. There's no reason to film the whole aspect of it. I just wanted to give you 3 different views on, transplanting or upplanting, whatever we're calling it these days. So these are in the pellets. Again, not a big fan of the small ones. I like the larger ones better, but when I have done this before, what I do is actually take this outer coating off. Now, in theory, the plant's roots should be strong enough to break through it. I'm not taking that chance. I'm just pulling it off anyway, just to make sure that my plant roots well and it grows. It does what it's supposed to do. That part fell off. It does not appear to me that any roots came out of it, so that's fine. I'm just going to put this back into the soil that I already, have set aside. No reason to throw it out. Now, I just took the tomato out of here, literally putting the chamomile in it. I don't know. I know some people are into sterilizing their soil and sterilizing their potted plants. I have never ever done any of those things. I am not knocking anyone who does. That's completely your choice. It's just not anything that I have ever done. And I've never had an issue, so I guess my concept is I don't really see a reason why I should start doing it now. All right, so I put new soil in it, made a hole, and I'm just going to set that right in there. I'm not going to go over the top. Just going to secure it in there a little bit. And there's the transplant of the pellet into a larger. Now hopefully that will grow and it will be warm enough to take it outside and I won't have to transplant it again. If I do, not a problem. Maybe we'll film that too. Otherwise, those are the 3 stages or the 3 different types of transplants that I typically do. And I hope that you have enjoyed the video and have enjoyed watching. You can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Happy transplanting!